You know, you rocked up at ETH Denver, unannounced, gave this wonderful keynote on the main stage, and people were really responding to what you were talking about. And you've said that Web3 can and will be this powerful tool to combat poverty. And I wonder if you can walk me through that. Is that happening today, or is this a vision that you think in the next year will be a realistic solution to what we're seeing?
Well, I'm working on some implementations right now. I think most people know that I believe poverty is unnecessary and that we can get rid of it. And Web3 technologies have the capacity to be an extraordinarily powerful tool in that. So even around us, if you look around, I mean, you're seeing billions of dollars of value get generated in different ways. Now, are people benefiting from that value in the way that we'd like? In my opinion, we can do a lot better. We can broaden the impact. So we can establish a win-win-win for everyone, where you can say, look, there are people who right now are on the outside looking in. Let's actually use these tools to improve their way of life, which would be a win for the people involved, but in my mind, it would also be a win for the entire space and the community, because it would help broaden the notion of what's possible.
So you said that you've got implementations.
Well, we've got implementations in the work. I wish that I had them to report on right now. Nothing would make me happier.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing them urgently because there's no time to waste.
Yeah, and so what do you say to critics who make the point, or they believe that Web3 is a lot of hand-waving right now, it's more of a PR play more than anything else?
Well, that's exactly what we have to prove or disprove. You know, if you can take people who had never heard of certain cryptocurrencies and actually put them in a position to benefit, then that can be good for people, but also help, again, broaden people's conception of what these tools can do.
A lot of people are blaming stimulus for the inflation that we're seeing today. And I wonder what your thoughts are on the whole stimulus check experiment, whether it has at all altered your view of, you've advocated for sending people money. Does that change now?
Sure thing. So if you look at the sources of inflation, first, the inflation that had existed before this past year was in education and healthcare and housing, in these staples. And that was obviously independent of anything in terms of stimulus checks. The stimulus checks comprised maybe 17% of the money that was issued with the CARES Act. Where did the other 83% of the money go? It went to institutions, it went to pipes. So there are a number of factors that are driving prices higher. Money in people's hands for a couple of months last year, in my mind, was a very, very minor factor in that. Most of that money has long since been spent. And yet you see inflation continue to rise. Why? Because there aren't enough goods to go around, and people right now are experiencing a lot of pent-up demand.
So this is the first time that we've really seen Bitcoin in an inflationary context, starting from the beginning of the pandemic. What does this change for your thinking about Bitcoin? A lot of people see it as like this hedge against inflation. Is that narrative accurate?
Well, everyone is concerned about inflation. I'm concerned about the fact that it's making a lot of Americans' lives miserable, because it's a very difficult circumstance when your expenses are climbing and maybe your income isn't keeping pace. So Bitcoin has historically been thought of as a hedge against inflation, as a digital gold, if you will. And I think that the interest level is going to rise as people do seek alternatives in terms of how to store value, because people know if you just have a bank account full of money, unfortunately that's losing value right now unless you're getting paid above the rate of inflation, which is, what, 7% nowadays, something like that. And the last I checked, savings accounts were still only paying 1 or 2% max.
Yeah, no, if you look at a long enough time horizon, some people make the case that storing your money in any fiat currency, you'll see an erosion of value. We're just seeing it at a much faster clip in places like Lebanon and Ukraine and Russia with what's going on with the ruble right now. Last August, a rubber-stamped $1 trillion infrastructure bill was held up for a week and a half by this voting bloc that I think a lot of people didn't even realize existed. And I've been speaking to people who are part of political, part of PACs. that are specifically funding politicians who either support Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies outright, or they just don't say anything negative against Bitcoin. And my question to you is, how significant is this voting bloc, and how big a role are crypto assets like Bitcoin going to play in future elections, like kind of going into midterms, for example?
I started something called Lobby 3 DAO that's trying to educate legislators and policymakers about the utilities of Web3. And the goal is to make it so that the regulations that get issued are reasonable and balanced. I'm someone who thinks that some degree of both regulation and taxation is warranted. But you don't want to push all the energy and innovation overseas, which heavy-handed regulation would threaten to do. Now, are there a lot of people who are looking at politics in DC in a new light because they feel like their interests may or may not be heard? For sure. I mean, we're surrounded by some people who resemble that. Some of those folks have become part of the Lobby 3 DAO, which is this community that we're building to make a positive case. I do think that this community is going to be an increasingly potent force politically, and that it falls outside of the traditional two parties. Because if you were to run around this room and ask, like, hey, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Most of the people will look at you and you can tell they're not either of those things.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin is its own religion and its own form of politics, I find.
Well, I mean, if you were to go around to folks here, I think most of them would identify as independents.
Yeah.
And independents have gotten involved in politics in different ways, but you're going to see in these coming cycles, many of these folks are very focused on the treatment of Bitcoin and other assets as who they're going to vote for.
Do we need a central bank digital currency in the U.S.? Because there's a whole lot of talk about it right now.
I think we'll see a central bank digital currency in the U.S. You already have one in China and other countries. So I'd expect that to be part of what's discussed in DC in the next number of weeks.
What is the intersection, if any, between UBI and cryptocurrency?
I think the intersection is very significant because if you're trying to get buying power into people's hands, one tool to do so is the US dollar, and I ran for president on making that case. But there's no reason why it necessarily needs to be in US dollars as opposed to Bitcoin or some other asset class or currency. I mean, we have to start thinking bigger about the challenges that we're facing. I think you're going to see new currencies emerge from the public sector, where you can have municipalities and communities experimenting with local currencies that will help drive people to local small businesses and nonprofits that may not be getting the support that they need right now. Mark Cuban had a suggestion during the pandemic where he said we should send everyone cash cards that can only be used at locally owned small businesses, and the money expires in 2 weeks if you don't use it, because we're just trying to drive activity. So those are the kinds of things that cryptocurrencies very naturally enable that US dollars don't. No one thinks about getting a US dollar and it's going to expire, or it can only be used in one place and not another. But these are utilities that we should be experimenting with in different settings right now.
Yeah, and that's some of the functionality that they've talked about with respect to the EU on. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. One thing I wanted to ask, you mentioned Bitcoin potentially being a tool with UBI, but with the closed circulation, I guess the better way to ask this is, people talk about, a lot of people here are talking about Bitcoin ultimately becoming the world's reserve currency. But when you're at a moment, like right now, some people say we're at the precipice of a recession, and typically how you deal with that is you print more cash, get more money into circulation. You can't do that with Bitcoin. You can't print more. So does it ever become the world's reserve currency, or how does that work?
Well, I think it's an important part of the future. And there are folks who hold Bitcoin right now who have a significant amount of it and are looking at at putting it to use in different ways.
Yeah.
So it can be a powerful tool even if the ability to quote unquote print it is not the same.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about, There are, I was on the phone with Senator Loomis this morning, and she's talking about a bill that she's co-sponsoring, a bipartisan effort at additional crypto regulation. Do people in the U.S. need to be protected against some of the, against the DeFi ecosystem and the frauds and the scams that we're seeing there? And is there a way to legislate against that? How into the weeds do we get in terms of trying to police this DeFi ecosystem?
My argument is that if we are able to put in guardrails that help people feel like, okay, if I head in this direction, my assets will be safe and that things aren't going to disappear on me, that it can grow significantly more, because there are a lot of people that are still avoiding the space out of a sense that it's the Wild West or less regulated. So I think some degree of balanced and smart and targeted regulation is actually positive for the space writ large and would curb some of the scams and the things that, in my view right now, that that narrative is getting put out there in a way that's unmindful of the other vast uses that have nothing to do with, with someone trying to do something unsavory. But if you were to put in effective regs, I think a lot of people who are on the outside looking in right now would feel much more comfortable investing their resources and time and energy.
What story is nobody writing right now about the crypto industry that I should be?
So one thing that I discovered a couple weeks ago is that there is a startup in Texas that's using the blockchain to secure patient data, so it just goes with the patient wherever they go, and it's not sitting on a hospital server, and there aren't the same kind of privacy concerns. I mean, you hear that and you think, wow, like that's very, very useful. That's the sort of thing that citizens would love. If you had your patient data just portable with you and it's secure in the blockchain and no one can tamper with it. That's not a story that's out there. There are dozens of other applications, rural broadband, using Web3. There are ways to solve problems in innovative manners that don't get discussed in the same way as some of the concerns.